Chapter 139 Boston, Vampire Fortress, 7 days after the battle at Black Harbor. Recommend that those so-called werewolves be either kept in reserves where their tendencies would not lead to bodily harm, or that they be culled entirely out of mercy. Only the Lord may bring an end to their suffering, but only we can ascertain that they do not contaminate us. The last segment of this report concerns creatures called vampires. For reasons that will soon turn apparent, reliable information of vampires has proven extremely difficult to acquire. In fact, the committee would have relegated them to the domain of speculation, were it not for the compelling similarities in the testimonies we collected on the elusive creatures. Witnesses, major mundane alike, all agree on several elements. First, vampires look and sound like humans, and most agree that they possess an uncanny charisma that allows them to infiltrate every strata of society. They spread their influence over their domain until every other supernatural group either leaves or falls under their spheres of influence. Mages, in particular, have mentioned night-held towns as hostile cities where uninvited visitors disappear after dark. This leads us to the notion of night. It is a universally accepted fact that vampires dislike the rays of the sun, and that they may not even survive them. Vampires cannot enter a home without being invited. Please note that it does not extend to public works, cannot be present on sacred ground, and fear fire with a passion. Those weaknesses do little to offset their incredible strengths. Depending on whom you ask, vampires move faster than the eye can see and easily display impossible feats of strength. One retired mercenary in particular, while deep in his drinks, admitted that he had seen a male specimen slaughter a whole squad of soldiers in the time it had taken him to raise his rifle. Others spoke of bodies savaged as if by grizzlies. Although fear and exaggeration may have inflated their reputation, vampires seem capable of amazing feats of physical prowess. Despite their blatant weaknesses and arguably low numbers, we recommend that vampires become the main focus of our group. Indeed, the lack of reliable information would indicate that they are the most dangerous, cohesive group. They may have already infiltrated the highest levels of the government. If we wish to safeguard the sanctity of our nation, it is imperative to uproot the most insidious supernatural elements before we can address the larger problems of mages, whose removal from society will require effort on a much larger scale. I place the report on my desk and look across the room at Safar. The petite vampire daintily puts her cup down, taking her time in an affected fashion that sets my teeth on edge. It was inevitable. Revealing our influence was going to create a backlash, she observes. And we all agreed that it was preferable to pierce the app just now to limit the risk of a public opinion shift against us. Yes. Of course. Still, the distrust of werewolves means that we will have to feed some of them to the government's supernatural control body sooner or later. Their tolerance of us will only diminish as time goes on. The government is decided by election, and elections are carried by the masses, not the city elites. They will need their bloodbath. Then I suppose that we must find them feral soon. Ariane. If you were considering taking my werewolves, the answer is no. Ariane. A sacrifice. HSSSSS. Safar opens her hand in a gesture of appeasement. Perhaps we can revisit this topic later. There is nothing to revisit. Those under my protection will not be forced to surrender a loved one for the sake of pleasing backward bumpkins who will only want more. Lynching is a blood sport, Safar. People love blood sports. They always have. What we need now is time. Are you truly willing to die on that hill? Someone is dying on that hill, Safar. I am a devourer. We keep our words in spirit. Do not go after my allies out of convenience when the country is filled with groups we would not mind seeing gone instead. Perhaps you are correct, or perhaps you also need to learn how to bend. I have expected that. By helping to gather such a large army, I have become a problematic element within the Accords. The contrast between my official position as a minor actor and the influence I wield fills others with distrust. It does not matter that it was a one-off, with most factions agreeing to follow me out of necessity and as reward for past favors. Our kind likes clearly marked hierarchies, at least until the next major power play. Safar is subtly suggesting that I allowed myself to be put down. Roll on my back and offer my throats to pacify the rest. Clearly, she does not understand how devourers think. I only bend if I have already lost. Submitting now will not erase our kin's memories of Black Harbor. It would help. Not if it comes from me. I could not be genuine. She sighs. Very well. Come, Constantine must be waiting for us. We stand up and leave Safar's busy office. Mortals rush past us as we cross the velvety corridors of the fortress' brand new wing, used exclusively for matters of governance. We walk out into the summer night and across a garden of roses, gathering a lot of attention as we go. The number of mortal attendants has increased dramatically in the past few years. I greet Wilhelm the butler as we enter the main building, and we are let out into Constantine's office by his silent bodyguards without issue. The speaker invites us to sit with a gesture as he hurries to finish a message. When he is done, he takes the time to clear the space before him. I recognize this ritual as the premise of a long speech. It means that he will dedicate his entire mind to the exchange. Ariane, thank you for coming. We are forming a government. Ah. I thought we already had one? Do not me, young one. We are getting more and more involved with the affairs of the mundane world. The Accords will require a unified executive branch to direct our influence. Safar and I have started to distribute the main roles and make sure that every alliance has their say. I have surrendered internal security and treasury to the southern faction, for example. Taxes. ARGGGGG. We were thinking about you for the Office of Supernatural Relations, as part of the diplomatic branch under Safar. You have already proven yourself quite capable at handling other groups. Would you be interested? I think about it for a good minute. I have two conditions. We are offering you an important government office and you have demands? Constantine asks with a frown. I hiss softly in answer, though it is a faux pas. The past 10 days have been harrowing in many ways. Do not pretend that it could not be a garbage, thankless position. I can already imagine it. The mortals come to me with grievances and I am brushed off by my peers. Then vampires demand that I force unruly allies to fall in line. I end up caught between a hammer and hard place, despised by all. Please. Constantine turns contemplative. Of course, it did not occur to him. He merely inspected a list of tasks to be done and matched the job description to each, not even considering how those could be abused and twisted. He is still enamored with systems, and dismissive of the people seeking to exploit them. Perhaps I should ask someone else if they want the position, he tells me curtly. Then do so. I care not, I reply, calling his bluff. I would rather have someone else place their hands in that absolute bear trap of a job. Safar smiles with indulgence. It would not hurt to hear those conditions. After all, we might even gain insight into the structural weaknesses of our little project. Oh, very well. Do enlighten us, Ariane. Right. First, I need the authority to enforce compliance and cooperation from my peers. If I tell a warden to stop fighting and wait for a council-backed arbitration to solve their dispute instead of killing everyone, I need to be able to stop them by force if they simply ignore me. Similarly, if we decide to assist allies with defending themselves, I need the backing and assistance of our kin in combat. Otherwise, I would merely be a glorified messenger. Compliance is a matter of internal security, while war is under the purview of Jarek. It would also go against my wish that every vampire remains the supreme authority within their territory. A difficult choice. You will have to decide. Indeed. You have raised a valid concern. I will rethink the position and come back to you, if that is agreeable. In the meanwhile, you had another condition? Yes. I can only enter the function in a decade. I am going to join the Knights. This must be the first time that I see true surprise on Constantine's hawkish face. Even his aura flickers. You what? I am losing control of my aura. Jimena believes that night training will help me reach the next step or at least help me bring the situation under control. As you know, if I follow the training to its conclusion, I will be honor-bound to assist the Knights for at least 10 years. But I was informed that such weakness was merely temporary. Yes, and in the meanwhile I am terribly vulnerable. Unpredictable urges leave my essence so depleted that I can barely run at a human speed. This is a recipe for disaster. I am leaving. Ah, I see. I had not realized that the problem had become so dire. In that case, you may decide on a deputy while you are away. Melusan, perhaps? She is too busy with managing our commonwealth, and will be even busier when the war ends. Say, would you object to a Rosenthal? Of course not. Ah, you mean one who still has loyalties to that crone? Yes. I see no objection, but remember that their behavior would be your responsibility. I will go back to you on the position I offered. In the meanwhile, the council is about to start. Let us go now. Asterisk. Accords council room, 15 minutes later. And as for our first order of the night, questions addressed to Ariane, Warden of Illinois. Warden, you have the floor. You may select who will ask the next question. I fully expected my peers being about on edge over the whole affair, and I was warned beforehand anyway. I have no issue confronting them. I wave a hand to invite someone relatively neutral, the Warden of Maryland, to speak. Did you know or expect in any way that your sire would be present? I had no idea that he would be present, no, nor did I cooperate with him beforehand. I have also not been in touch with him since. This is the truth. On my blood I so swear. The warden nods to show assent and backs out. The next to speak is Vadim of the Vanheim, who alone can ride a nightmare through their native dimension. Are the werewolves safely corralled, and will they become an issue in the future? They have returned to my territory, yes. And what are they doing? How would I know? Do they expect me to ride out every day and discuss their business over tea and crumpets? Digesting? Vadim raises an amused brow, but does not press the matter. He and I are of a mind on my subjects, simply by being outsiders with very little link to our clans. The next person is the replacement for Yan, Warden of Virginia, the same whom Constantine slew in this very room. He is a recent lord by the name of Benoit, who clearly opposes the faction I belong to. His strict demeanor has irked a few of us, but there is no denying his administrative skills. He is as good as the speaker and considerably smoother. He bears the manners of a private, dark-eyed tutor elevated to raise a prince and who has been insufferable ever since. We are concerned about a group of notoriously unruly creatures left uncontrolled, especially in these troubled times. For the sake of all, you must allow us to supervise them, and implement whatever measure we deem necessary to guarantee peace. I wait in silence, until Benoit loses patience. Well? I am still waiting for your question. Will you, he asks slowly as if talking to a child, or will you not work towards the common good by putting a muzzle on your dogs? I will not. Next question. I see no point in engaging in a pointless exchange of barbs with one who may be more proficient at this art than I am. By being curt, I show dismissal more than weakness. All those present know that the way I handle my constituents does not concern them. If they want to intervene, they will have to force a motion through the council and break the tradition of letting wardens handle their own affairs. It will not happen any time soon. Explain your contingency plan if Archmage Lewis suddenly decides to turn on us and sends the government on our trail. I will hide and watch with amusement as his own cabal tortures him to death. Next question. You are not taking this seriously. Your childish behavior dishonors this noble assembly, Deverer. I am granting your questions the respect they deserve, Warden. I see that you are done. Next person, please. Numenada unexpectedly comes to my help with a question on the state of the wounded soldiers taken to the White Cabal city of Avalon. Since they fought by my side, I made sure that they were treated fairly and healed by my allies. I even let them keep their expensive weapons. It always feels surreal when she acts so seriously. In the end, Benoit suggests that I be removed from managing the relationship with the White Cabal on account of gross negligence. But the proposal finds little traction, even among my rivals. For once, Benoit made a mistake. The arrangement with the White Cabal is with me personally, not with the current Warden of Illinois. As such, It is considered a private matter and is none of their business. The session soon turns to the future and its difficulties. This message we intercepted shows that the Office of Supernatural Affairs under Archmage control will not suffice. The veil we put over the mortals' eyes will tear soon enough, and the public will turn on us as expected. Right now, our control over newspapers afforded us a period of grace, but it will not last. We need to prepare, Adam of the Roland says. He is a more moderate member of the Southern faction. I already expect our dear Safar to take over the organ responsible for finding and killing us and imagine that it would be enough, he continues. I mask my reaction. I thought that too. Unfortunately, the rule of law is merely a distant concept in most of the country. We must prepare for pogroms and purges. I request the creation of a standing mercenary army. We look on, surprised. Adam usually advocates for less involvement with mortal affairs. Right now, the bill of habeas corpus has been temporarily suspended by the president. With so many soldiers everywhere, few will risk outright riots, and those will be quickly quelled. After it is done, however, the army will shrink. A lot of men will find themselves without employment. We must make use of this opportunity and take over cities where riots are the strongest. To protect peace, you understand. You plan on turning chaos into opportunity? Constantine asks, unexpectedly breaking his own rule by talking out of turn. Adam does not mind. In fact, the canny lord is positively giddy. Precisely. Our dear mage allies are scattered, and their largest organization has a vested interest in our success. I propose that we go that route and take a more direct approach to governance. We are overstretched as it is. We need not rule in person, merely direct our investment towards taking control of all important infrastructures in several regions, especially the South. If the war ends the way we expect it to, the South will need a significant financial boost to recover, one that we are in a position to offer. Grab the land and it will not matter for whom people vote, because the candidates will be provided by us. I see. It makes a surprising amount of sense. We are already relatively protected from witch hunts by virtue of inborn paranoia. As long as we can keep to the shadows, we should be able to weather the coming troubles. It is the mages who will suffer the most, for they are fragmented and alone. The moment the disguise falls, so will we. But we have no choice. It is too late to hide in remote caves and faraway villages. In the meanwhile, we should still start at the top. Adam allows. Over the next few days, I finished compiling the reports from my allies on the battle at Black Harbor. We had casualties of over 1,500. A third of those are fatalities. The werewolves lost a dozen members and were almost all wounded. 8 vampires were destroyed in the entire battle, including 3 masters. The fighters on foot had more casualties, even with the help of the night squad. The White Cabal did not communicate their losses. Despite our success, the cost in life will create a precedent. I have also used political capital accumulated over decades to gather such a force, and now we are even. It will take some time before I can gather such a force again. At the same time, the different groups have come to see me as a rallying figure, and it can only help my prospects. Newspapers have milked our great victory for all it's worth. The extermination of the hive is presented as a much-needed triumph, and convinced many who were on the fence about supernaturals in general. It will do little to sway the rest. If we want a bit more tranquility, we will have to be more direct. Washington, a week later. Perspective of John Fuller. Mr. Fuller had held many jobs in the past, but the one he was most famous for was bounty hunting. He had started with horse thieves and found out that he was really good at it. After that, he had gone after more dangerous targets, like highwaymen. Then came the exotic. Mr. Fuller was not a liar. He had told things as they had happened, nothing less, nothing more. Some people had always believed that he was exaggerating. After the monsters came out, they had reflected and realized that he was uniquely qualified for a certain task. Just like that, Mr. Fuller had gone to Washington. Now Mr. Fuller was Agent Fuller, and he was the first of his kind. The door to the newly made secret office opened after the third key turned into its lock. Fuller crossed the tiled floor of the lobby and greeted the guard, a dour man sitting all night long behind steel bars, loaded shotgun in hand. It was a small measure considering what they faced, but better some protection than none at all. His steps led him up a flight of wooden stairs. The office was a grim and impersonal affair, as befit a task without glory and without end, for Fuller harbored no illusions. Even if one day, mankind got rid of its enemies, he would not be there to see it. And then it would probably turn on itself. The agent came across a half-open door leading to their administrative office. Perlman was here, still, despite the hour. "Sir?" the young man asked with a hint of German accent. "It is quite late. You should head home." The young secretary blinked, then seemed to remember something. "Ah, yes, before I forget, your new recruits have gathered for a meeting." "Here?" Fuller asked with surprise. "Now?" The man frowned. "Yes, it surprised me as well." Fuller grumbled and went a floor up, to the dining room converted into an improvised meeting space. His agents were competent men drawn from the ranks of the military, lone wolves who worked better by themselves most of the time, but knew the importance of teamwork when taking down dangerous foes. Loners to find their mark, team players to take it down. Soldiers, to do what must be done. Fuller stepped outside to listening, and worried. There was only silence. He opened the door slowly, carefully, and saw Agent Russell staring vacantly at the ceiling. The man's warm brown eyes met his, and Fuller went in, hand on his service weapon. At the head of the table, where he would normally sit, was a woman drinking coffee. Wafts of an excellent blend traveled to him. She put her cup down with a click. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked. "Please, join us," she replied with a light voice, the one of a socialite politely inviting someone in. Fuller did not hesitate. He took out his revolver and froze when a monstrous weight settled on his right shoulder. His revolver fell with a clatter, drifting across the varnished floor. It was the only noise to be heard. "I insist," the woman finished. Fuller's gaze traveled up, from the massive mat clamped on him to the mountain of a man to whom it belonged. The giant considered him with a complete lack of care and gave him a gentle push forward. Fuller was forcefully awakened to a moment of great lucidity. Suddenly, his heart thundered in his chest and his lungs inflated like sails. This was it, a defining moment. He calculated his chance if he were to flee, or to struggle. He was a confident man and did not usually deceive himself. His chances were not good. With as much calm as he could muster, Fuller walked to the other end of the table, opposite the woman. The man behind her still stood at the entrance. He had this strong man, reliable right-hand feel. The woman was different. She looked quite young and pretty in a provincial air sort of way, but there was something mature about her demeanor that bothered him. It took only a few moments to realize what it was. She was not moving. Like a statue, her poise and immobility were both perfect. Perfectly cold. Inhuman. "Oh, no. Do you know why we are talking, Mr. Fuller? Why your agents still live, unharmed?" the woman asked, inspecting black nails. "You called it unharmed?" He spat. "I do. They will return to normal as if nothing had happened once I release them," the woman asserted. You want something from us? To threaten us? In a way." Her alabaster fingers circled the edge of the cup. There was a dull sound, like the aftermath of a bell ringing. "I believe that you are inevitable. Mankind has discovered the darkest recesses of the world, and you long to expunge its inhabitants. I do not begrudge you this desire. It is in our nature as well. You are a vampire." She did not reply. "You are the first of many. Even if I kill every last one of you tonight and hang your defiled bodies before the smoking remains of your lair, another 2 groups like yours will pop up in secret. They will have less competent members, but will take more precautions. It is a game of escalation that we are unwilling to play." Fuller felt it then, a glimmer of hope. "You are scared of us." "No, Mr. Fuller, we are not scared of you. There are simply more dangerous things than us hiding in the folds of history, and they require all our efforts." "What sort of things?" he asked. She met his gaze for the first time. "Pray that you never find out. Now, for my proposal. The world is filled with enough parasites and nefarious idiots for you to have your hands full until the turn of the century and beyond. We will assist you in this endeavor by providing you with leads to genuine targets. In return, you will keep your attention away from us. And if we do not," she smirked, "you will receive a warning. Then, you will be shown that the darkness is an ancient battleground, and that you are very new and inexperienced players. I do believe that I already provided an adequate demonstration. If not, my friend here will gladly provide another." The giant man placed his hand over the head of the closest agent. The view made Fuller think of an egg in the hand of a cook. He swallowed with some difficulty. "No need. You have made your point. I understand. Do you? Well, I will be sure to send you some valuable reports then, and perhaps visit on occasion. Goodbye." The woman finished her cup and stood up. She disappeared. The man disappeared as well. The other agents were staring at him, awake and alert. "Everything fine there, boss? Are you ready to start the meeting?" Yes. Of course," he babbled. The agent forced a smile, but it never reached his eyes. Sheer, animalistic terror seized his heart. But Fuller had survived worse. He schooled his expression and made a short summary of recent happenings. The others could feel that something had spooked him, he knew, but he needed time. They all needed time. And a solution. He had one. After they were done, Fuller retreated back to his office and picked up a discarded file, one that he had dismissed as too troublesome. The letters were hastily written as if by someone in a hurry. On Gabrielites it said, "****. I spend the next month working tirelessly to stabilize my territory. All our efforts have only delayed the inevitable. Already, legislations are voted in states to handle the supernatural population. The most popular is the Hawk Law, proposed by a representative from Tennessee. Mages are to be corralled and placed in special areas for the good of all. The measure is advertised as a wartime necessity. We are forced to relax our control over newspapers or risk delegitimizing them in the eye of the public. Across the country, lynching and trials abound. Burning at the stake comes back in fashion. The trend hits our allies the hardest. All of the werewolves who can have moved north or to my territory, so that only the insane and the dangerous are left behind. For the mages, however, the situation is infinitely more complex. Most of them just try to live a normal life. Worse, many who have the ability to cast are not formed and their abilities come out as quirks. As such, some unlucky people with uncanny skills are soon singled out, even if those skills are the result of mundane talents. The country is tearing itself apart. Chaos also spreads across the old world. In the wake of our revelation, the belief in magic has traveled across Europe, leading to significant internal conflicts. Different cultures take different approaches to the resurgence of the supernatural, but the most common remains to create ghettos of casters, at best. We bear witness to a planet-wide witch hunt. By comparison, we are much less hit due to our hermetic nature. All established vampires possess a buffer of mortals between the world and us, and we have experience working from the shadows. On my land, the noisiest troublemakers find themselves victims of accidents and kidnappings. All is not bleak. Mage groups ally with each other to weather the coming storm, causing an explosion in the numbers of red and white cabal recruits. Lobbies form to oppose local laws, backed by powerful financial interests. Ours, obviously. Illinois Guns of Liberty exploits the mayhem to expand drastically. And then, in July, things change. High in spirit but poor in supplies, Lee decides to take the war north, hoping to achieve a decisive victory and turn the Confederate States into an independent nation. He leads his men across the Shenandoah Valley and meets Grant's army at Gettysburg in a cataclysmic, 3-day battle. Lee's attack is relentless while Grant plays on the defensive, biding his time. On the third day, Lee makes a fatal mistake. He orders 15,000 men to charge the Union's center. They're slaughtered. As he scrambles to shore up his defenses, Grant smells blood in the water. 80,000 Federals now face 50,000 exhausted rebels. Grant's counterattack is immediate and merciless. Backed by the most powerful artillery battery ever gathered in the conflict, his troops charge west, cutting the Army of Northern Virginia in two. A daring cavalry assault under a certain General Sheridan, no relation, routs the northern half of the army. Lee decides to withdraw his battered forces, but recent rains have swollen the Potomac River and he is trapped, beset on all sides by furious attacks. On July the 4th, after a 4-hour artillery bombardment, Lee surrenders to Grant. His army is shattered and only debris of divisions manage to escape. On the same day, the strategic town of Vicksburg falls into Union hands. In a day, the Confederacy received 2 death blows. The surge of patriotism that follows those much-advertised victories bolster Northern morale while the defeat consternates the South. Lee, the genius of Chancellorsville, offered his enemy the road to Richmond on a silver platter. A few weeks later, the Confederate Army of Tennessee is also defeated. Despite those efforts, the war does not end and Grant orders an all-out assault with all Union armies pushing deep into the South. One of his generals, Sherman, cuts a scorching path to Savannah in only a few weeks. In November, the war is over. In the wake of the end of the conflict, the Accords vampires change their focus. The fever of victory has lessened the burden on magical communities for a moment, giving everyone time to consolidate. The next battlefield will be political. In the meanwhile, we scramble to seize Southern assets and I enter an extremely profitable business relationship with Adam of the Roland, a necessary measure. Indeed, with the war over, the demand for guns drops spectacularly, and so does my income. By helping Southern lords to take and rebuild their industry, I somewhat offset the lost revenue. Things are as calm as they will get, and I contact Jimena immediately. She will escort me through Europe and to the Knights' stronghold. It is time for me to attend their training. Chapter 140 I let the wafts of freshly brewed coffee caress my nostrils with its deep, bitter aroma. The ritual usually settles and distracts me, but not tonight. There is a knock on my door. Come in. Jimena steps into my temporary quarters in one of our secure New York's compound. With the white cabal so close, this one has been designed for discretion more than for safety. It still has all the comforts one might expect in a modern city. My bedroom is vast enough to host a small tea party. Ariane, sister. I am so excited. She then takes in my frown and shows some distress, bless her. Is something the matter? Are you reconsidering? No. No. I am simply quite upset by a recent development. I was attending a recent English play called Our American Cousin at the Ford Theater in Washington, and I had to stop a drunk man with a gun from ruining the show. And the play was not even that good. Crass humor. But honestly. Bandits? Understandable, for what country does not have their scoundrels? Civil war. It happens to the best of them. But a play interrupted by some political action? No. No. 3 times no. Thank the watcher that I am leaving, because this entire country is going to the dogs. I wash my hands of it. I roll my eyes as far as they can go to illustrate my points. Jimena, that heartless traitor, takes it in stride with a light smile of her own. Finally, I can welcome you into the ranks of the old guard. Whatever do you mean? Only we masters grumble and vociferate about the current developments. It pleases me that you would join our esteemed ranks, wizened and gray of heart, if not of skin. Are you calling me old? Well, you are almost 80 if we count your human years. I had forgotten it. Ah yes, memory is one of the first things to go, Jimena remarks to herself. Oi? Do not be alarmed, it happens to all of us. The losers retreat to parochial villages out of fear for novelty. The successful ones, like the both of us my dear sister, merely sneer judgmentally at every passing new fad while adopting novelties we approve of. Like women wearing trousers. Oh. Scandalous. Maybe one day. We can but hope. In any case, are you ready to leave? The ship is waiting. Yes, yes, all my affairs are in order. There is just a small matter that I have to attend to before I leave. I shall direct your help to my luggage while I attend to it. I was just waiting for you to begin. What is it? Nothing too bad, I hope? An unusual worry seizes my heart. I hope not. Sheridan asked to talk. It is not every night that I am caught off guard. The setting Sheridan chose is a nice cafe in the better part of the city. We are alone in the room he picked, and the sound of late diners provides a surprisingly mundane background to our conversation. One that I was not prepared for. In that defining moment, all the small details I had relegated to the back of my mind come in sharp contrast. The crow's feet around his keen eyes. The gray in his proud mustache. Even the first wrinkles in his always tanned skin. He is still a dominating presence, but it is the presence of the experienced mentor, the battle-hardened veteran who compensates his failing body with wisdom and experience. I am not coming with you. I can see the pain in his eye, the guilt, the distress. His decision is already made and I feel a knot untying in my essence. I suffered terribly when Dalton died, but now Sheridan leaves me and his departure is soft and consensual. The cold in my mind spreads slowly like winter air from an open window. I do not resent him. I physically cannot resent him, and yet I am angry. It's not that you have done something wrong. On the contrary, you have proven that your word was true. We have done good together for the past 2 decades, but that's the thing. It has been 2 decades. I am tired. It seems to be an important moment for him, and so I let him speak. My anger dissipated as quickly as it came. Even an Irari's natural grudge cannot stand before a vulnerable vessel. My nature will not allow it. I am not as young as I used to be. The nights we spend awake take me longer and longer to recover from, despite your efforts. Spending an hour in a cold ditch to line up the perfect shot used to mean nothing. Now, my back hurts and my knees creak like a rusty carriage. I must stop now. And there is something else. I wave a hand to indicate that he should continue. Melatonin is pregnant. I almost spit my coffee. You knocked up the speaker's twin? Hold your horses, she's not the speaker's twin, she's Melatonin. A fully fledged agent of the Accords. We have been together for over a decade now. In any case, we have been together for a while. We were careless. I asked her to marry me. She said yes. Wow. Congratulations. I asked her 2 days ago. You are the first person to know. She thought it wiser to inform her brother after you had departed. I imagine the face of Constantine as he learns of everything and immediately feel better. Yes. I understand, I finally admit. And I do. The truth is that Sheridan was never going to become my servant. We make a good team, but we do not have the dynamic and mindset I would expect from someone I would keep by my side until the end. He is a conscience and a right hand, one who bridges the gap between mortals and us. I need someone different, more an accomplice than a lawman. You understand? I expected you to be mad, Sheridan admits, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I would lie if I said that your decision does not affect me, but I do understand where it comes from. My perspective of time made me forget that things remain different for mortals who are always on a limited time frame. Ah, look at me babble. We had a good run, you and me. That we did. So, what now? Will you stay in Boston? Yes. Mel says that Constantine will be insufferable unless she is well protected, and the fortress is almost impregnable. I'll say, it sets my mind at ease knowing that there are walls and horrors between the world and her when she will be at her most vulnerable. Do you know that a pregnant woman was lynched in the streets in Georgia? Because the mob thought she had turned a child into a goat? The world is mad, I tell you. Mad. He exclaims, aghast. I smile and let him rant. A vassal is lost to me, but he remains a person I hold in my esteem and I should keep ties alive with mortals. The cold settles in my mind as the cormorant cuts the waves across the Atlantic. I distract myself from the passage of time by drawing and painting for hours every night. This year, the Parisian scene came to laugh at the Salon des Refuses, a collection of the works refused by the French Academy of Arts. The Academy prefers realistic, precise brushwork and classical scenes. They called the thick strokes and flamboyant colors of the rebels unfinished and impressionist. their modern settings vulgar, uninspired. However, the audacious paintings attracted the attention of mass and mine as well. Rather than presenting a clear and classical image to evoke emotions, the newcomers use composition and colors to grab the viewer directly by the soul. They provide the perfect answer to the spread of photography by focusing on sensuality and sensation as expressed by the painter. I ordered 2 paintings I had shipped to me at great cost, even though the artists themselves are relatively unknown. The purpose was to study their style and brush stroke with a real work, not some rendition. Manet and Cézanne. I do not recognize those names, but I will hold on to the paintings just in case. Slowly, I experiment with new techniques over a few sketches and finally decide on my first renegade painting, the view of the distant north as I emerged from Semiramis Labyrinth all those years ago. In a few days, the painting takes shape. I do not show the entrance of the cavern, which was at my back. Instead, I draw the polished glass of the permafrost and the fresh snow swept by endless winds. I make the mountains impossibly remote, and larger than they truly were. Above, I draw auroras animating the heavens with curtains of shimmering emerald. They provide the only light color in a landscape of dreary darkness. Even then, they are ephemeral and trickery, robbing the attention without pointing away. Jimena had tried to distract me from my works by presenting the captain and mates, but they do not interest me and her efforts grow more subdued when she sees the fruit of my labor. The first result pleases me intensely, and I soon find another composition. When we visited the Fist of the Drowned God with the latest Bingle iteration, I spent a few hours crawling my way through deep passages. Once, we came across a single ray of early afternoon light piercing by luck through the layers of the earth. They would be soon blocked, but for a moment the deep caverns knew the touch of the sun. I try to evoke that feeling and make the sun searing and alien. I also conceal on one side the dark shape of the deep folks shaman who led me through it. The light reflects on the two nacreous dots of her eyes, when one looks carefully. By the eye, Ariane. You outdid yourself. Although, your choice of composition is a cause for concern. How so? It is nothing. Probably a temporary side effect. I shrug and let the days pass by. We feed only a few times, and spread them between willing crew who know what to expect and will be compensated for their sacrifice. Their essence is pleasant enough, though I admit that without our regular spars, I would have been restless. As expected, her style is still direct and to the point. While Nami is graceful and unpredictable, Jimena shows her drive and directness by employing very few feints, instead overwhelming her foe through chains of precise strikes. I delight in ruining her rhythm through aggressive and sometimes illogical movements, and she is quick to show me that she can adapt. What shocks me the most, perhaps, is how evenly matched we are. In fact, I believe that I could overtake her if I relied more on my raw speed and intuition. I refrain from doing so since it would simply defeat the purpose of the exercise, but it shows how much I progressed over the past few decades. I remember a time when she could effortlessly stab me in the heart. Now, I could beat her 4 times out of 5 if I used everything including magic. Between painting, gossiping, and practice, Jimena also finds the time to tell me what to expect from the training to come. As soon as we arrive at the fortress, you will be tested. The knights do not expect all of their recruits to be zealots in the service of justice like myself, but they do want to make sure that you are committed to your engagement. I imagine that they would take their precautions. Yes. There will be a few oaths and promises to swear. Before you protest, they are quite reasonable. After all, half of those who join our ranks are vampires who decided to, remove themselves from their worldly troubles. You mean disgraced people. Need I remind you that I am supposed to be the brutally honest one? Forgive me, O shrewd one. I shall consider it. In any case, there are many crises to handle and few volunteers, even fewer who wish to commit for all of eternity. The oaths protect the organization as much as it protects its members. Once the compulsory service time is over, you will only be bound by simple vows of secrecy. The test I mentioned also covers battles, dueling, infiltration, politics, culture, tactics, and language. Really? Yes. If you are accepted, and you will be with just dueling alone, you will join a group of squires in a designated role. The training will be extensive. Knights pride themselves in their ability to take down superior opponents through superior teamwork. I am not convinced. I remark. You are probably referring to Anatole's embarrassing display when he faced Lord Suarez. Jimena continues without missing a beat. I would not let that give you a wrong impression. Coordination can only carry you so far against a warlord of the Cadiz. You should not expect a band of puppies to take down an old lion. I will trust your judgment. Good. After you and your squad perform to the satisfaction of your trainers, you will be sent on a few missions. The first tasks will be relatively simple according to knight standards, such as preventing a war. My surprise must be obvious, because Jimena reacts immediately. Yes, you must forget about the American squad's role so far, and realize that the Accords are more effective than you give Constantine credit for. The old world is saturated with cables and interest groups. Conflicts flare and die off with the phases of the moon, sometimes in terribly bloody fashions. You will have your hands full. In any case, let me address the training part once again, as it is why you have joined after all. All members of a squad receive personal guidance on top of their team-based practice from the best trainers around, the founders of the Knight Order. The founders? They still handle the day-to-day affairs. Jimena's gaze burns with the fire of the true believer. Yes, when they are not in deep slumber. They sometimes take on apprentices for more private lessons. Your profile is unusual enough to attract some attention. I am confident that they can guide you on the path to ladyship, not just with your current problem, but also to allow your fighting style to reach the highest spheres. I am not merely boasting. The Knights Elite are among the best fighters in the world, or we would have been irrelevant from the start. You will be in good hands. I hope that you are right. The trip passes quickly between all those distractions. The Cormoran is faster than the previous ship I traveled on, and I cannot help but wonder if, one day, we will be able to cross the Atlantic in mere days. That would be incredible. It would also make visiting my dear Tehran so much easier. Ah well, one may dream. By the end of August, we moor in the port of Brest, where a night train will take us to Paris and more private traveling arrangements. Vous voyagez soils? A man with spectacles asks us as we sit down. I was taking out my notebook to review a few variations on my pain spell, and his interruption is not welcome. We do not travel alone, I reply curtly, since we have each other. Jimena and I wear travel garbs, unique creations from our favorite Boston models that follow the artistic dress trend. While many women here favor Victorian style, I simply would not be caught dead in all those hoops, petticoats and bustles. I have only so many hours in a single night. I will not sacrifice 2 of them to be swaddled in so many strings like a freshly caught boar. Artistic dresses are easy to move in, with a medieval influence that remains proper without doubling as a tablecloth. My recent obscene wealth still permits me to get the very best fabric, the most vibrant dyes in the hands of a master. Jimena's dress is light brown with a light forestry effect given by the discreet use of leather, while mine is dark blue and flowing. And your husbands or fathers approve of this? The man asks with a mighty frown of disapproval. Ah, yes, I forgot about that. I spent the last few months exclusively interacting with people who knew who, or what I was. In the rare other occurrences when I had to leave a good first impression, I had either Sheridan or John act as an intermediary. Now, however, I am merely a lone woman traveling alone. Most mortals will take exception to that. I have little care for social censure when it comes to random strangers, like this irritating gentleman, but I must remember that I will be dismissed most of the time. In a way, I am pleased. This little escapade will ground me after all that alliance business went to my head. I shall enjoy it as a refreshing entertainment. Now, to ruin this idiot's night. I suppose that you will have to ask them. I am not sure that I like your tone, miss. How dreadful, I reply in my most bored voice. Your disapproval is duly noted. And ignored. The interloper has been castigated. Justice has been rendered, and I return to my art as he grumbles. Drawing is such a frivolous activity. he finally exclaims. "Jimena dear, this man is talking to himself." "We share a carriage with a lunatic," I remark, still in French. "I knew it as soon as I laid my eyes on him, dear friend. What are we to do?" Jimena deadpans as she inspects her nail. "That is too much chastening for the nosy prick." He yelps in outrage and leaves the first-class carriage, grumbling under his breath. "Should we eat him?" Jimena asks. "And have his vapid tediousness sully my palate?" "Please." "Fair enough. Say, do you want to spend a night in Paris? We have time." I wince at the memory of my previous stay, but I also realize that Jimena is trying to cheer me up and that I should indulge her. After we arrive at the Gare du Nord, she drags me through the streets of Montmartre where we feed on a couple of drunk artists, leaving them even dizzier than before. We are quickly intercepted by a group of vampire fighters, and I recognize them as a squad I defeated before being captured. There is a thin mustachioed man with the air of musketeer, and a plump lad with a frizzy dark beard and the demeanor of a bear. They all wear impeccable black suits. "You are Balthasar, my lady. It is a pleasure to see you again in better circumstances," the plump one exclaims. "And I am Cedric, madam. Likewise, I thank you for sparing my life. Although you certainly gave me a splitting headache. It is quite common when one's head is cleft in two, my friend. Milady, I am Ingalls. We never got the chance to be acquainted since you dropped on me and stabbed me through the heart." Jimena slaps my shoulder. "Sister, you had not told me that you had left such a good impression." "I may have kept the exact details secret for the sake of the gentleman," I politely reply. "You do not kill and tell. I like that in a woman," Ingalls says, as Balthasar nods with approval. "We came here to act as escorts in these troubled times, but since it is you and I personally owe you a favor, name a place in Paris and I shall open its door to you." "Really?" I ask with some disbelief. "Anything but the Cathedral Notre Dame, obviously," Cedric adds. "Yes," Ingalls continues, "we have some sort of quarrel with the owner. A sordid question of religion. We are personae non grata. Is it not gratuit? I would not know," Ingalls finishes. "I never graduated from Latin class." "If your offer is sincere," I interrupt, "then I would like to see an art gallery, specifically from the group that was refused by the Academy." "Oh, excellent. I know their art dealer. We will go see one of his exhibitions at once. The old dog owes me one and I know where he hides his keys." The ensuing visit amuses me a lot. Unfortunately, the trio knows little about painting, preferring music themselves, so they are unable to answer my questions. I still enjoy the experience tremendously, and when we are done, they politely escort us to the more exclusive train that will take us east. "They wanted to bed us," Jimena notes in passing. I know. We settled down for the day in the same bedroom, near the last carriage, and spent some time getting to know our train driver. He is the same dour Roland master I met years ago, still carrying his duty with stoic countenance. My surprise is therefore great when the man thaws in the presence of Jimena. "Knight Jimena of the Cadiz, it is my privilege to welcome you aboard once more. How is America treating you?" "Well enough, dear Crispin. We have had our hands full recently." The man winces. "Yes. Here too. The general public is coming to terms with the existence of magic. We are seeing a massive population influx towards the capital as persecution bleeds the more traditional regions of its more creative people. There have been talks of mass extermination, though our kind has worked tirelessly from the shadows to neutralize the more charismatic leaders. Every nation has turned on itself. Even Hastings herself has returned from her escapade. Rumor has it that she had a falling out with her husband. She must be doing rather poorly. Yes, and so are her foes. There are more bodies than ships floating in the Thames right now. We spend the remainder of the night gossiping with Crispin and catching up with the latest European news. I followed the situation from afar thanks to Rosenthal dispatches, but I was not so interested until now. Apparently, the nations are in turmoil with the rising urban workers opposing the more traditional, religious side of the population. Countries struggle to define an identity, some looking to the past and others to the future. We only retire with the coming of dawn in our plush quarters. We wake up in the early afternoon and get dressed, making our way to the exclusive lounge where we find ourselves alone, no other vampire traveling at the moment. I have barely started to serve myself some tea when a massive explosion rocks the entire train. By the watcher. Furniture crashes to the ground and the light flips as my sister and I cling to the floor with our claws. With an agonizing sound of twisted metal, the heavy car leans to the side and collapses. I hear a ghastly groan as we slowly slide to a stop. Only then do I remove my talons from the ravaged wood next to me. That is unusual. And unexpected, Jimena notices calmly. If my painting supplies have been damaged there will be hell to pay, I say. We can try and see if we can get the train conductor's body with us for safety's sake. Unlikely. Crispin rests securely in the front compartment. If any of the armor is breached on the way, the sun will pierce through it. The light would kill us in an instant. With no alternative, we stay put and listen, with some surprise, to the sound of firearms outside. The protocol in case of attack is clear. Whoever survives the initial assault is to hide and hold, and wait for the night. There are people fighting outside and they are not ours. The crack of gunpowder sounds for quite some time, and I even feel the aura of magic through our protective enchantments. The battle rages for a few minutes, then calms down. What is happening? I do not know. Eventually, we hear movement inside of the train and someone knocks on the door. We recognize Crispin's aura and let him in. I see the beginning of anger in his sad brown eyes. He has our gear with him. I apologize for the inconvenience. I am afraid that we were bested by unknown assailants. How are your people? Jimena asks. Fury flares in our guest, and I see his fangs for the first time. We have lost some. All of the others are wounded. Poor old Amelia. Will not see the next dawn. He stops for a while to readjust his crooked tie. I must admit that I am most curious about who would interrupt us so. I would like to go out and ask them. In person. And we would be delighted to join you, I say. I can understand vengeance quite well. Excellent. I took the liberty of removing your equipment from storage. I hope that you will accompany me as I may be a bit out of practice. We take our armors and I watch, bemused, as the man removes an old chainmail and a dark iron-spiked mace from a bag. Were you a warrior? I ask. Yes and no. I was a bishop. In my time, bishops went to war with their congregation. I had no idea. This is rather interesting. Without waiting, Jimena starts unbuttoning her dress, forcing Crispin to gulp. And in my time we did not swear vows of chastity either. I will leave you to it. We get changed quickly and I check all my weapons, especially the big iron which saw little use against the hive, but remains an effective weapon against mortals. We reconvene in our room and huddle until nightfall. As soon as the sun sets, we exit from a secret trapdoor under the wheels. I open it first and inspect my surroundings. We are in a deep pine forest, and the smell of sap, blood, and gunpowder assail my senses. The train rests on its right side along a flat band of grass now little more than furrowed mud. A body in a familiar leather trench coat lies prostrate a few feet away from me. To the right, on top of a small mound, a barricade has been set, and I see the metal glints of bayonets. The three of us exit with no specific efforts made to hide our presence. We are immediately hailed by the fortified folks. To my immense surprise, the voice is distinctly female. Hey comrades. Over here. She says in French. I shrug and let Crispin decide what to do. He sighs heavily and walks up to the defenses, where we meet the most bizarre and heteroc-like assortment of fighters I have seen in a long while. There are men and a few women in factory worker garbs huddling around. They are led by a young couple who look like they are 20 if they are a day. A small red flag flaps in the light wind. The man squints but the woman's eyes shimmer in the darkness, and I see a simple focus hanging from her rustic dress. Thankfully, you are all right. We came to save you just in time, comrades. Any enemy of the bourgeoisie is our ally in this glorious struggle. Together, we will defeat the capital and its odious servants, and return the means of production to the people. We what now? Tobe continued.